Hare Krishna, welcome back to our Bhakti Yoga Journey series. We are continuing our discussions with the second canto of the Bhagavad Puran, and we will begin where we left off last time, where Parikshit Maharaj he asks these fundamental questions about what is the duty of a person who's about to die, and what is the duty of a person in general. And then Sukadeva Goswami very eloquently, in a very scholarly way, in a very philosophically expert way, he presented that how that ultimately remembering the Lord, Ante Narayana Smriti, remembering the Lord at the time of death, this is the duty, and this has to happen through by chanting the holy names through the Kirtana process, and how very systematically Shukdev Goswami he establishes the process of pure devotional service. So we went through that whole discussion. And in a sense, Parikshit got an immediate answer to his question, right, as to what to do. But then now how to do is the remainder of this Bhagavatam. So so now you will see, starting from this chapter onwards, very beautiful description of what does it require, what does it mean to understand the concept of absolute truth, the Param Satya. What does it mean to understand that? So very beautifully, this chapter onwards sounds little, this point onwards, Bhagavatam gets little technical, but it's really amazing to understand the Vedic theology. If you really want to call yourself as a Vedic practitioner, some very important foundational concepts are explained starting from this point on. So this, in a sense, this specific chapter, chapter 4, is a very small chapter and may not seem very relevant in the bigger context, because Parikshit just asks few questions. That's all that's happening in this chapter. But there are some very powerful lessons for us to learn, and we'll try to derive them, because before we venture into a deeper study of the Bhagavad philosophy, it's important that we understand the mood of Bhagavad study, and therefore this section is going to bring about that understanding. So let's actually see this discussion. So this chapter now begins. Suta Goswami, addressing the sages of Naimisharanya, he gives a very beautiful description of the hearer of Bhagavatam and the speaker of Bhagavatam. So very interesting description first about the hearer, Parikshit Maharaj. He says, Vayyasaker iti vachas tattva nischayam atmanaha upadharaya matim krishne auttaraya satim yadhat. He says, Parikshit Maharaj, after hearing the answer given by Shukdev Goswami, he started to fully concentrate his mind upon Krishna. And the very interesting word that is used is satim. With lot of chastity, he was listening to Lord Hari's description. This usage of this word is very interesting, because what makes this conversation important? There are so many conversations that are happening around us, right? And there's no shortage of information that way. But what makes this specific conversation so interesting, right, is how satim yathat, that the hearer of this conversation and the speaker of this conversation both have some unique characteristics, and their perfection, their fidelity to a higher principle is what that is making this conversation so special. So one may ask, okay, what is so glorious about Parikshit? All he did was just ask a question, right? But no, but what is the consciousness of the audience, Parikshit here? Very beautifully described. Atma Jaya Sutagara Pashu Dravina Bandhushu Rajye Cha Vikile Nityam Viruddham Mamatam Jaho. So Parikshit Maharaj, he was the emperor of the entire Bharatavarsha. And look, what is his consciousness now in asking this question? Because many times people like to ask questions just out of some itch, some intellectual itch, some curiosity. But here you can feel the intensity of Parikshit Maharaj. Look, what has he done here? He was able to give up his attachment to things not so easy to give up, right? So if you see, if you see, Atma means one's own body. So Atma word has many meanings in this context. One's own self, one's own body to start with. I mean, you can be detached from everything else, but deep down we want to maintain that comfort and the coziness of the body. He was able to give up the attachment to his own body. Jaya and Suta, his wife and children, his agara, his royal palace. Mind you, for those of us living in Mumbai in our own tiny little pigeon holes, giving up our attachment to our house is, perhaps little more easy. But we are talking about Parikshit, who's an emperor. For him, Agara, right? Agara is not just some small 2 BHK apartment. We're talking about a palace, a royal palace with all the comfort, right? And Pashu means animals, right? Very interesting. Prabhupada in the Purport, he says, animals like horses and elephants, which are traditionally used as modes of transportation, you can conveniently translate the word Pashu today as all the cars, all the vehicles, the bikes that we get attached to, right? Then Dravina here is the Vitti, the treasury, the wealth that he has, right? And Bandhushu, all his friends and relatives. Rajye, his whole power, kingdom, the authority that he experienced. So these are not easy to give up. The power that you have, the position, the control that you experience, the facilities that you have, the wealth and the other infrastructure that you have, or so basically your attachment to things, people, and the situations where you are experiencing control, these are not easy to give up. And yet, Parikshit, just with a drop of a hat, he was able to give these up. The moment he got to know about the curse that was pronounced upon him, he was able to very easily move on to this phase of his life. This shows that what is the consciousness of Parikshit Maharaj? Though he was surrounded by matter, he was never materialistic. And this is such an exemplary characteristic that will come repeatedly throughout Bhagavatam. And this is something so beautiful about the Vedic Dharma, that while the Vedic text talks so much about detachment and renunciation, but at the same time, you hear descriptions of great kings like Yudhishthir and Prithu and all these great exalted kings, and there's description of their wealth and opulence. Very beautiful balance of dharma and artha is what you will see. That is why the beauty of the Vedic culture is balance. How when dharma becomes the foundation, artha and kama, that is wealth and desire, will ultimately culminate in moksha. So a true practitioner of Vedic philosophy is not a hater of matter, but rather they are careful of materialism, of not getting obsessed by it. So this is the consciousness Parikshit demonstrated so beautifully, right? And then and his consciousness is further described here, that how the great soul Maharaj Parikshit, constantly wrapped in thoughts of Lord Krishna, knowing well of his imminent death, renounced all sorts of fruitive activities, namely acts of religion, economic development, and sense gratification. So all the dharma, artha, kama. So all these three things he was able to transcend, because now he has come to the point where he knows this is that phase of my life where I need to work on my final journey, right? And thus firmly fixed himself in the natural love for Krishna and all these questions, exactly as you are asking me. So Suta Goswami was asked certain questions, and therefore to give a best reply, he is quoting this conversation between Parikshit and Sukha, because that gives a perfect answer. So this is the quality of an advanced soul, that how when the right time, they know what is the right thing to do at the right time. Right? This is what maturity gives. This is what spiritual advancement gives. That is why spirituality is not a copy paste practice. It's a consciousness based evolved practice. You cannot, you can get inspired by these great souls, but you cannot imitate these great souls. We need to own our own realizations, our own maturity, and then act on that basis. That is why you will never find methods like, okay, 4 ways, 4 techniques to master your life, right? 6 ways to become detached. You'll never see any such sutras in the Vedic text. Rather, they give you a practice, a sadhana to evolve your consciousness, and then you take a decision which is suitable for you. So it's a method of empowerment of consciousness and not just some memorization of technique. So when Parikshit Maharaj, when he demonstrated this, right? So that was his glory. And we saw in the previous chapters the glories of Shuka, how advanced and how renounced he was. When Shuka, when he walked into that assembly of sages, everybody could recognize his glory and his greatness, to the point where they all stepped aside. They knew that this is the perfect person to answer the king's queries. So Parikshit, if you remember that conversation, the previous canto, he asked these questions about the aim of a person who's about to die. He asked this question to the entire assembly of sages. And there were different opinions among the different sages. But Shuka gave a perfect, philosophically astute answer. And they knew his expertise. Not only was he an expert scholar, but even internally, he was an extremely detached person. We saw in the first canto description of Shuka how he would not stay in a house longer than the time it takes to milk a cow. Meaning that how detached he was. Just to maintain the body and soul together, whatever was required, he would do just that bare minimum. Otherwise, he would. There's a beautiful story that once King Janaka wanted to test Shuka's determination. And so he invites Shuka to his kingdom and he gives him a task of holding 2 pots of milk while he is walking around. Now, mind you, Shuka, he would be fasting most of the time. And only when you fast, you will understand this test. Because Janaka was seeing, will he start salivating? Right? So on Ekadashi, on fasting days, you will know this. On Ekadashi, when there is a nice gulab jamun or rasgulla or some samosa in front of you, right? You are trying your best not to look at it because, through your physical actions, you can hide, but your body will not hide. So the salivary glands, they are directly connected to the prana, and the prana is connected to the mind. So the body and mind are linked through prana. That link, that agency that transfers the thoughts into the physical space is the prana. So you can mask your physical actions, but you cannot mask your thoughts. So moment your thoughts get agitated, your prana will also get agitated, and you cannot then control the effect on the body. So the physical agitation that comes as a result of pranic disturbance cannot be hidden. And that's exactly the test that Janaka gave. And Shuka, whole day, he was just completely oblivious. Just as an order that was given, a duty was given to him, he carried this milk without spilling a single drop, and going through the whole palace and the royal opulence that Janaka had. And Janaka understood the glories of Shuka. So that's how exalted. So when why is before we go into the technicalities of the Bhagavad Puran and all the philosophical understanding, why is Vyasa presenting these 2 important concepts? Because when you're trying to study Vedic philosophy, when you're trying to understand the spiritual science, the source of our knowledge is very, very important. Hearing has to happen from an authentic source. There's a very beautiful conversation that comes later on in the Bhagavad Puran, the 10th canto, where Parikshit asks a very interesting question. Now, let's unpack the question first of all. He says that how is it that right now when we are having this class, what are you interacting with? You are interacting with your screen. What is the screen made of? Material energy. From your speaker, there is some sound coming. What is it sound? It's vibration in air molecules. That is also material energy. Even when I am speaking, that sound, that's vibration air. I am speaking a language, words. Words are concepts, notions created by us, right? Language, English language is a creation by us. So which is also, you can say, a transformation of material energy. Somebody's mental energy manifested as a language. So all that is happening in this process is we are all interacting with material energy and exchanging material energy. How come there is spiritual transformation happening? Can material energy bring about spiritual transformation? Does matter have the power to lift spiritual energy? Right? And sometimes certain atheists also raise this question that, what is this book made of? Paper. Paper is matter. Letters are ink. That is matter. So all you're interacting is with matter. There is nothing spiritual about it. Right? But this is where Shuka gives a very beautiful understanding that it may look like matter, but matter is also a carrier. What is the energy that matter is carrying is very important. That Bhagavan's Chit Shakti means spiritual energy, finds a channel of matter to connect to you and I. So right now, all these tools we are using in our interaction may seem like material energy, but because the intention in this Sangha is that of spiritual advancement, that of trying to cultivate our purity, cultivate some kind of a spiritual acumen, because that intention is pure and the source we are studying from, the original conversation between Shuka and Parikshit, because the source is pure, it carries that Chit Shakti. So when you are interacting with Bhagavatam, when you are interacting with this book Bhagavatam, when you are reading a book printed with ink, it's not matter that you are interacting with. It is spiritual energy that you are interacting with. And that is why in the Vedic culture, I'm sure those of us who grew up in India, we have this notion that how books are Saraswati. Even accidentally, if you drop them or if you touch them by your foot, you immediately, apologize, you sanctify it, you take blessings, right? Where does this understanding come from? Because it's not matter. Now, if you look at it as ordinary book, then it will not manifest its spiritual potency. Therefore, even so in this conversation, both Shuka, who's spiritually surcharged, and Parikshit, who was also equally spiritually surcharged, it was a perfect combination. And therefore, this conversation is the perfect conversation about the absolute truth. And when you connect to such an authentic source, that is when heart transformation happens. Very beautifully, Prabhupada writes, I'd like to read this purport. This is text number 5, that how, what is the proof that this was a perfect conversation? Parikshit says, O learned Brahmana, you know everything because you are without material contamination. Therefore, whatever you have spoken to me appears perfectly right. Your speeches are gradually destroying the darkness of my ignorance, for you are narrating the topics of the Lord. The proof of authenticity is in its experience. It is not a theoretical concept. When that Bhagavan's Shakti enters into your life, you will experience a transformation. Very beautiful purport. The practical experience of Maharaj Parikshit is disclosed herein, revealing that transcendental topics of the Lord are like injections when received by the sincere devotee from a person who is perfectly uncontaminated by material tinges. In other words, the reception of the message of Bhagavatam from professional men heard by Karmakandiya audience never acts miraculously as stated here. Because in India, there's a popular concept of Bhagavat Saptaha. Like, because Parikshit took 7 days to hear, so sometimes there are professional reciters of the Bhagavatam, right? But the intention of the audience is this is some kind of a pious duty. And if you do that, sometimes people who are maybe struggling to have progeny or maybe struggling to improve their business, with such intentions, they take a sankalpa, they take a resolve that, okay, I will organize this event so that I'll get some progeny or some wealth or blah, 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 whatever. But because the mentality, they are not seekers of the higher truth. So therefore, such professional recitation will not have the due effect. Whereas devotional hearing of the message of the Lord is not like hearing ordinary topics. Therefore, the action will be felt by the sincere hearer by experience of the gradual disappearance of ignorance. And proof, when a hungry man is given food to eat, he feels satiation of hunger and the pleasure of dining simultaneously. Right? Tushti, pushti, kshut, apaya. Right? You get nourishment. Right? Tushti, you become happy. Santushti also comes when you eat food. And kshudapaya, your hunger is destroyed. So when you eat, you don't have to be reminded by someone, hey, you had food. You experience it. Right? As I say, the proof of the pudding is in eating. So the proof of such authentic message is you will naturally experience a spiritual inclination, a spiritual transformation within you. Right? And that's what makes this conversation so special. And now, Parikshit Maharaj is going to ask some very important questions of Bhagavatam. Because remember, what did Sukdev Goswami say? One should remember Lord Krishna at the time of death. So what better way to remember Krishna than to hear his very cute pastimes as baby Damodar, or his amazing pastimes of Krishna in Rasa Lila, or maybe his Govardhan Lila where he reciprocated with everyone. Is that what Parikshit is going to ask? No. Look at the question that Parikshit is going to ask now. I beg to know from you, what is it? Bhuya eva vivitsami. I am asking, I wish to learn. Vivitsami means I want to learn. Vidwan, I want to master, I want to understand this very properly. What is it? Bhagavan Atma Mayaya. How the Supreme Lord, by his own energy, Atma Maya, Maya means energy, Atma means self, by my own energy, Yatha idam srijate vishwam. How does he create this physical world, this phenomenal world? And how this is Durvibhavyam, this is very difficult to understand even by the Devatas. How does the Lord create this physical world? Parikshit is asking question about physics. I mean, you have Sukdev Goswami. Technically, it is physics, right? Physics is study of the physical world, right? So why is he asking question in physics? I mean, you have Sukdev Goswami sitting in front of you, right? And you are asking a question which perhaps you would ask Stephen Hawkins, right? But this is where the broadness of the Bhagavatam's vision comes in. The scientific temperament of Bhagavatam comes in, because unlike in the Western world where religion and science have always been seen as opposites, in the Vedic Dharma, understanding of the absolute truth includes understanding of the physical world. Sarga, the creation, the transformation that happens in the creation, the secondary creation, Visarga, how the entire universe is organized, Sthanam, and how the universe is maintained. What are the laws that are maintaining this universe? Poshanam. And not just that, how our psychology is influenced. Uti, what is our motivation? And how, again, the Lord manifests directly or indirectly, right? So, and ultimately how he is the shelter. So all these topics, understanding the absolute truth includes understanding of the creation, not just these extraordinary pastimes. So before we enter into the realm of greatness or into the realm of sweetness, should come the understanding of the greatness of the Lord. In fact, it's like a cause and effect, because so many people have steal things. What's the big deal? But when Krishna, who is a creator, maintainer, and master of everything, like it's like saying Jeff Bezos broke into Amazon warehouse and stole a chocolate, a candy. Right? I mean, why would he have to do that? He is one of the richest people on this planet. He owns everything. Right? Is it a crime? Right? So for somebody who's breaking into his own house and taking his own property is not called stealing. It is just called exercising their authority, I guess. Right? So, but if ordinary people do that, we call it as stealing. But when Krishna does that, we call it a pastime, a Lila. So to understand the relevance of a Leela, you have to understand the greatness of the personality who's engaging in that Leela. And therefore, before you enter that realm of sweetness, we try to understand the greatness of the absolute truth. Therefore, Parikshit wants to understand that. Then he says that kindly describe how the Supreme Lord, who's all powerful, engages his different energies and different expansions in maintaining and again winding up the phenomenal world in the sporting spirit of a player. Very interesting description here, that how in fact, we can go on and on. We can actually have a whole class on this one question. Look at the perspective of Parikshit, because if you try to understand the concept of God, different schools of philosophy have their own ways of explaining. One school of philosophy may say there is no God. At least we are past that stage, because Parikshit knew who the creator was, right? And therefore he asked, his question was not who is the creator, but how does Krishna create? So at least that part he already clarified that. Some schools of philosophy may say that God has nothing to do with the creation. Material energy operates on its own. God is completely aloof. Or sometimes, or some modern schools of philosophy or religion may say, God created this world and now it's like, you make an AI robot and now the machine grows on its own. And now he's not directly involved in the operation of the world. Maybe he's a creator, but perhaps not the operator. Or maybe he's a creator and operator, and sometimes things get so overwhelming, it self-destructs. The destruction is not in his control, right? So different schools of philosophy have different opinions. Look at the Bhagavad, the proper Vedantic understanding. Behind Parikshit Maharaj's question, Vyasa very beautifully encodes the Vedantic thought process. He says, kindly describe how the Supreme Lord, who is all powerful, engages with his different energies. Very interesting. Is he involved in the creation? Yes. Does he become the creation? No. Then what of him becomes the creation? His energies. So, is God the creation? Technically, yes and no. Because in terms of causality, the creation cannot exist independent of God. Therefore, this physical world is an expansion of God. But does it mean the physical world is God? No, it's a separated energy. So Prabhupada many times he gives a beautiful example of how milk is a separated energy of cow. Can milk exist independent of cow? No. But is milk cow? No. Right? So there are separated energies. Right? At the same time, cow also has an internal energy, a calf. While calf is sentient, milk is not sentient. So while the material energy is not exactly sentient, whereas us, the jivas, the spiritual calves, the spiritual children of God, we are sentient. Right? So that way, very beautifully, the understanding of the Shakti and Shaktiman, the energy and the energetic, in terms of the potencies of the energetic, the creation is beautifully described. So actually, in Parikshit's question itself, there is so much of philosophy, right? And how the different expansions are maintaining. Okay, this is also very interesting. All right, let's say God created his energies, right? And is he then, Prabhupada gives an analogy of, in the Greco-Roman traditions, they have a concept of Atlas, the world map Atlas named after this person. And how is Atlas described? Carrying the entire globe on his back, and is looking very tired and frustrated. Oh, big load on my back. I don't know when I'll have my back pain. He looks like that. So is Krishna carrying this on his back? In fact, when Prabhupada commissions the painting of Govardhan Lila, the artist, she drew Krishna lifting Govardhan with big biceps and muscles and like some Mr. Universe and little and sweating little, because it's a big mountain, right? When he's lifting a mountain, you got to break a sweat. So he puts it there. When Prabhupada laughs and says, "What is this? Krishna doesn't struggle. His energies, he's like a tender little child. His arms are soft like butter, and yet he's lifting this mighty Govardhan effortlessly, just like how a child, a baby lifts a mushroom. With that ease, Krishna is lifting Govardhan through his energies, right? He's not struggling like Atlas. So, is Krishna, okay, when it comes to Govardhan Lila, yes, it's a Lila he's lifting. Is Krishna personally coming and making sure, okay, earth, oh, you have to be solid. Okay, let me maintain the solidness of earth. Okay, he comes and makes sure he's sitting in your room and holding the wall together, right? Krishna is standing in an invisible way, or he's in water. He goes to the water, ensures that the water maintains its liquidity. Is he personally present? Again, no. He is present through his expansions, right? It will be interesting before we start the next chapter where the creation theory is beautifully explained. It will be interesting for you to revisit chapter 3 of first canto that we had, the discussion where the different avatars of the Lord are described. The concept of how we discuss the concept of polymorphic monotheism. How there is, in the Vedantic understanding, the proper Vedic understanding is how there is this one supreme absolute truth who expands into different forms, right? So these are called as the Purusha avatars. How through the different Purusha avatars he expands. So that's where the role of, as Bhagavad Gita explained, the role of Paramatma comes in. Krishna is personally present in the creation as Paramatma, ensuring the structure of this universe, ensuring the ontology of things, like solids have to be solid. So Paramatma, through his potency, he ensures the solidity of solids, the liquidity of liquids, the gaseousness of air, right? So the thingness of a thing comes from the presence of Paramatma. So that is how he expands. And in the creation, there are multiple levels of expansions. We'll discuss that in the next 2 chapters, right? And so not only is he the creator, through his energies, he is the creator. Through his expansions, he is the maintainer. And finally, he is also going to wind up everything. Sometimes a creation can become too big and overwhelming for the creator, and it goes out of control. But Krishna never loses control. When the right time comes, he's also able to unwind the whole creation. As if to say, nothing existed before and nothing existed after. Everything that you see, all that the billion, trillion, zillion years that you experience of material energy is just one inhalation, exhalation of mind. That's all that there exists, right? So, aham evasam evagre, later on in this chapter, that in the beginning, all that exists is that one supreme truth, right? In fact, this is a concept that is so beautifully highlighted in the Upanishads, in across different world traditions. In the beginning of, before everything existed, that one Supreme existed. And after everything is over, that one Supreme alone exists. Right? Even in many world cultures, this form of understanding, philosophical understanding is there. And all this, by listening to all these questions of Parikshit, Sukdev Goswami perhaps might have been thinking, oh wow, you already know everything. Why are you asking me? Then he says, Nunam Bhagavato Brahman Harer Adbhuta Karmana. These are Adbhuta Karmana, these are Adbhuta, extraordinary, inconceivable activities of Lord Hari. And Durvivabhyam, these are extremely inconceivable. Even Kavibhi means extremely intelligent scholars. These transcendental activities of the Lord are so wonderful. They appear inconceivable because even by great endeavor, many learned scholars have still proved insufficient for understanding them. So through scholarship also one cannot understand these things. Right? So so what is that qualification to understand these things? Very beautifully he says, kindly clear up these doubtful inquiries, because you are not only vastly learned in Vedic literature and self-realized in transcendence, but you are also a great devotee of the Lord. So Sukadeva Goswami's greatness is, not only was he an expert in Bhakti, but he was also a master of Vedanta. Bhakti and Vedanta, the perfect combination is what is Sukadeva Goswami. And therefore you are as good as a personality of Godhead. Only a Bhakti Vedanti can properly explain the concept of the absolute truth. And so very beautifully and very humbly putting forward these questions, now Sukadeva Goswami begins answering these questions. Now we just heard the greatness of scholarship of Shuka. Does he say, yes, I know the answer? You asked the right expert. I am the expert. In fact, in this audience, nobody can give the right answer. You are intelligent because you realized I am intelligent. Right? No. Look at the response of Shuka. Because even Shuka understands that even I am just a carrier of the Chit Shakti, of an energy which is beyond me. Therefore, let me first tune my frequency to that higher energy. Let me tune my consciousness with Krishna's consciousness. So that tuning happens through prayers. And that is why when we announced this class, the title we gave was The Questions and the Prayers. Parikshit asked some questions. Usually we expect questions and answers. But here, before the answer comes a prayer. Because answering questions like this, discussing Bhagavatam, is not an academic exercise. It's a very deep internal prayer, a contemplative meditation, a devotional meditation. Therefore, you cannot be, you just by academic prowess, you cannot master Bhagavatam. In fact, nobody can ever master Bhagavatam. You can only serve Bhagavatam and receive whatever Bhagavatam reveals. And therefore, with that mood, very beautifully, Sukadeva Goswami is praying. And the prayers of Bhagavatam are also so philosophical. See, look how amazing prayers he describes. He says, Namah Parasmai Purushaya Bhuyase Sadudbhavasthana Nirodha Lilaya Grihita Shakti Titiyaya Dehinam Antarbhavaya Anukalpa Lakshavartmane. He says, Namah Parasmai, let me offer my obeisance unto that Supreme Purushaya Bhuyase, that Supreme Personality, right, who is a complete whole. He is a superset. Nothing can exist independent of him. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate. Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. The Upanishads describe how the absolute truth is infinity. In fact, this is a definition of infinity. Infinity is that superset from whom you remove as many supersets as possible, still the infinity remains in complete whole. Infinity plus infinity is infinity. Infinity minus infinity is also infinity. Right? So that Purna, is Bhuyase, is that complete whole. And Sat Udbhava Sthana Nirodha Lilaya. How? For the sake of creation of material world, he accepts these three modes of material nature. Right? So very interesting. So many times when we study the Vedic causation theory, right, in our YTTC, we studied this, how there is the material cause, the efficient cause, right, the instrumental cause or the efficient cause, right. Then we study how there is the ultimate cause and the formal cause. One may think these are all different causes, but if you study Bhagavatam properly, ultimately Sarva Karana Karanam is Krishna. Krishna is that material cause. But the three gunas he accepts for the sake of creation. So that way, the three gunas are him, at the same time, they are not him too. The Jiva, for whom this world exists, he is the ultimate cause. We will see in the next chapter. Because of the desire of the Jiva, this whole world takes a particular shape. It may seem like he is the ultimate cause, but where is that consciousness of the Jiva coming from? It is coming from the Supreme Lord. Right? In our many discussions in the past, we discussed this, how moonlight is just a reflection of sunlight. So the consciousness of the Jiva is just a reflection of Paramatma's consciousness. So they cannot exist independently. The moment you say Jiva is completely different and independent from the Supreme, you are making its existence outside the box of infinity. So when the Upanishads describe sometimes Jiva and Paramatma, Atma and Paramatma equivocally, they are trying to describe this relationship of causation, that how the individual consciousness cannot exist independent of the Supreme Consciousness. There is a cause and effect relation. The moment you say Jiva is completely different, a dual entity from the Supreme, then you are saying there are two independent truths. That violates this concept of Param Satya, absolute truth. Therefore, so he accepts this material and he is the complete whole residing within the body of everyone. That's the point here. So not only does he create this physical world in the form of the gunas, he also exists as Paramatma within our heart and gives us a consciousness and gives the notion of a Jivatma. Right? So very beautifully, these are the inconceivable ways, how he is simultaneously one and different from matter and spirit. He is a supreme source of all energy and he is that supreme consciousness too. Right? So this is the incredible prayer that Sukadeva Goswami is offering. Then he says, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the form of the complete existence and transcendence, who is a liberator of pious devotees from all distress and the destroyer of the further advances in atheistic temperament of the non-devotee demons. For the transcendentalists who are situated in the topmost spiritual perfection, he grants their specific destination. So the Lord, he ensures that the dharma prevails and the non-theistic, atheistic temperament does not increase. So not only is he maintaining the physical world, he is also maintaining the consciousness of this world. You may think, oh wow, really? I see a lot of atheism around me. I see people have no philosophical understanding at all today. Right? Is Krishna taking a break? What's happening here? Right? Think about it. The fact that you and I are able to sit and discuss Bhagavatam, right, that itself is a miracle. Right? So even today scriptures exist, even today temples exist, even today, especially today, there's so much of traction in terms of the spiritual conversations happening, so much of spiritual movements all over the world. That itself shows that there is a higher force which is protecting the spiritual consciousness of the society, right? And then another very beautiful prayer. He says, let me offer my obeisances unto he who is an associate of the members of the Yadu dynasty. Very direct prayer to Lord Krishna. And who is always a problem for the non-devotee. He is the supreme enjoyer of both material and spiritual worlds, and yet he enjoys his own abode in the spiritual sky. So he is Goloka eva nivasati. He is present in Goloka, in the spiritual sky, and yet Akhilatma Bhutao. He is also present in the heart of everyone. He is present there and is present here. We understood that in our YTTC, the concept of time dilation and the omnipresence and omnipotence of the Lord. So he is present in the spiritual world and the material world. Therefore, there is no one equal to him because his transcendental opulence is immeasurable. And very beautiful prayer now. Yat kirtanam, yat smaranam, yat ikshanam, yat vandanam, yat shravanam, yat arhanam. So, whose glorification, whose kirtana, whose smarana, remembrance, whose ikshana, just by taking darshan of him, yat vandana, by offering prayers unto whom, yat shravana, about hearing about whom, yat arhana, by worshipping whom, lokasya sadhyo vidhunoti kalmasham, tasmai subhadraya shavase namo namaha. He is the Subhadra, he is the supremely pure, all auspicious, right? He is so auspicious that just by coming in contact with him, either through kirtana, smarana, darshana, vandana, prayer, or hearing, or just by worshipping him, vidhunoti kalmasham. Kalmasha means contamination. All that is vidhunoti, like perfectly cleansed. Dhunoti means cleansing. Vidhunoti means like perfect cleansing, spotless cleansing, right? That happens. That's the power of coming in contact. Prabhupada gives an analogy of the sun. The sun sitting millions and millions of miles away from earth, but manifests within on this earth in the form of sunlight. And when that sunlight falls on any dirty thing, it falls on stool or urine on the floor on earth, it purifies the earth. It never gets contaminated, right? As the Upanishads also describe, Shuddham Apapa Viddham. He is supremely pure and not contaminated by the worldly material energy, right? Therefore, Tasmai Subhadra. Therefore, let me offer my obeisances, Namo Namaha, unto that supremely pure. Then another very beautiful prayer. So this line, Tasmai Subhadra Shavase Namo Namaha, he repeats repeatedly. Vichakshana yat shravanopasadna. So the sadhana of vichakshana, by discrimination, by intellectualization, right? The highly intellectual, simply by surrendering unto his lotus feet, are relieved of all attachments to present and future existence. Without difficulty, progress toward the spiritual existence. Let me offer my obeisances unto that supremely pure personality, upon whom even the intellectuals surrender. In fact, the whole purpose of our intelligence is to come to a proper, convinced conclusion that I cannot understand the absolute truth. Only by His grace I can understand. Right? Then very beautiful word. Tapasvino dana para yashasvino manasvino mantra vidha sumangale. Tapasvis, whether you are, extreme austerities. Dana para, if you are, expert in charity. These are all the Vedic modalities of spiritual growth. Yashasvino, extremely, you have done some commendable work. Manasvino, you are expert in controlling your mind like a yogi. Mantravida, you are expert in recitation of mantras, right? And Sumangale, you are a strict follower of the Vedic path of auspiciousness, right? Kshemam na vindanti vina yad arpanam tasmai subhadraya shavase namo namaha. Kshemam na vindanti, one will not receive the end result of austerity, charity, study of scriptures, mind control, recitation of mantras, following the Vedic lifestyle. You will not gain the due result until the results are offered to the Supreme Lord. Very beautiful. If you see, the Vedas, they offer so many modalities of spiritual growth. At the same time, they are very clear that there is only one thing you need to do through all this. That yad arpanam. Offer all of this. These are all means. Different people find these different paths easy to connect based on their psychology, inclination, and their samskaras. Some people may connect to the absolute truth through austerity, some through charity, some through meditation, some through recitation of mantras, some just by following strictly the Vedic lifestyle. Irrespective of that, sometimes you may get stuck in these modalities. That's the problem. Don't get stuck to a modality. Understand the goal of the essence, right? So one Acharya Bhaktivinoda Thakur very beautifully describes that don't be a Bharavahi, but become a Saragrahi. Bharavahi means like an ass carrying burden. Don't carry the burden of these Vedic processes. Become a Saragrahi, understand the essence. Why austerity? Why charity? Why good deeds? Why meditation? Why chanting of mantras? Why follow a Vedic lifestyle? The purpose is to, so ultimately that there's a very beautiful quote that comes from Padma Puran that आराधितो यदि हरि तपसा तथा किम न आराधितो यदि हरि तपसा तथा किम. If you are आराधितो यदि हरि, if you are worshipping Lord Hari, if that essence is very clearly manifesting in your life, tapasa tatha kim, why tapasya and all the austerity and all the different modalities, right? You already serve the end purpose. And na aradhito yadi hari, if you're not worshipping Lord Hari, tapasa tatha kim, then what's the point of all your modalities, right? So therefore, smartavya satatam Vishnu vismartavya na jatatit, sarva vidhi nishedha. So all the vidhis and nishedas, all the rules and regulations, etat evatayor kinkaraha, these, they are subservient to this one principle, that smartavya satatam Vishnu, always remember Lord Hari, Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna. Vismartam na jatuchit, always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. This is the only yama and niyama, that's it. The only do is remember Krishna, only don't forget Krishna, that's it. Right? While the first do is for the advanced souls, the don't is for the conditioned souls. We are prone to forgetfulness. So the do's are for the advanced souls. Always remember Krishna, and don't forget Krishna is for us. That's it. That is all that the Vedas talk about. All the hundreds and hundreds of the shlokas, finally they culminate to this. Right? Therefore, that Supreme Lord who's the end goal, Tasmei Subhadra Shavase Namo Namaha. Let me offer my, and this remembrance of the Lord is so powerful. Very beautiful verse, beautiful in the sense that it has a relevance beyond Bhagavatam. Because many times we think, oh, was Vedic culture growing in isolation? Because so many other world cultures were around. Did they know about their neighbors? What is happening in the world? It almost seems like it's like a parallel universe. They are talking about their own kings, their own people, their own rivers, their own culture, their own food, their own mountains. Anything beyond India? Do Vedas know anything beyond India? Here's a beautiful reference where now Shukdev Swami is saying the potency of remembering the Lord, who all can get purified. Kirata, Hunanda, Pulinda, Pulkasha, Abhira, Shumbha, Yavana. So these are all the names. So Prabhupada very beautifully explains who are all these people. So Kiratas, this is the part which is today now near Bihar, Chota Nagpur, those places where even today there's a lot of aborigines, lot of tribal population still exists, and these aborigines used to, and they did not have any such form of worship as such. They were connected to nature. They were not philosophically very astute, but even such personalities without any Vedic philosophical understanding, even they can get purified if they take shelter of the devotees of the Lord. Then Hunas, what are the Hunas? Hunas, Prabhupada writes, is that area of East Germany and the whole of Western Russia, Eastern Europe, that whole section was called as Hunas, right? And Mahabharata actually also describes about these Hunas tribes. In fact, they were living among, even today, there is semblance of Vedic culture you will see in those regions. Andhra, we know, still has the same name, right? Even back then, there was not so much of Vedic culture that time. So Sukdev Goswami is including them in the category. Even Andhra people will get purified if they take shelter of the devotees of the Lord. Then Pulindas were the Greeks. So they knew about the Greek, and mind you, that time Greece was not just Greece. Greece had its border all the way into almost till Sindh. Then uh, Abhira is the word that eventually became Arabia. So all the Arabs are included. And again, Arabs existed from the southern Afghanistan, south of Iran, all the way into the Arabian Sea, the modern day Arabia. All that region they were called as Abhiras. Interesting the word Abhiras, because mind you, all these people, they at one point were living in India, in the Bharatavarsha, and when Parshurama took a vow of destroying all these upstart kings, they all fled India, they all fled Bharatavarsha, and they settled around, and some even fled, they went even deep into Central Europe and even some Scandinavian countries. So that's how far the Vedic culture had its expansions that time. But because over a period of time they lost connection to Bharatavarsha and the Bharatiya culture, they became like offshoots. So it's very interesting that maybe there's a whole class in discussion, and I see we are almost out of time. It's a whole class for some other time. There are many pre-Abrahamic festivals and cultures that are still practiced, especially in Europe. You will see them very prominently, which have their which can be connected to Vedic roots. Like, for example, now it is coming, Halloween is coming. So if you see, right, I think 31st, right, is Halloween, right? So Halloween, where it's celebrated as a festival of the dead, but actually it is very strongly connected to the Pitrupaksha festival of India. So from the Mahalaya Amavasya to the Deepavali Amavasya is the time when the Pitris are connected, are Pitris. Now again, there are a lot of interpretation. Pitris can also mean our own immediate ancestors. Pitri can also mean the archetypal ancestors, which are basically the elements of nature represented by the Pitri Devatas, the different Vasus and Adityas and Rudras, etc. So anyway, so this concept of worshipping ancestors, because now they end on Deepavali, because now it's time for them to go back, we light their path back. So that is why you will see in India, starting from Deepavali, that Kartik Mas, right? We light lamps everywhere, because it's not, don't think of it like some plane and a runway light and now they take off from the runway light. The light has an energy, and through the energetic channel, they reach to their Pitru Lokas. So, but then now the concept of Pitris, and first of all, it's lunar calendar. So somewhere, some year back then, it would have been October 31st equivalent. And now today they are stuck to that lunar solar calendar date. But actually, it's, and in different parts of the world also, even in Southeast Asia, they have a celebration. Even in South America also, they have around this time, the famous festival of the dead or something like that. They have a carnival of the dead, I think they have some name for that. So these are all these people. And the Yavanas are the Turkish, right? Now the Turks are different from the Arabs, they are different from the Persians, they are different from the Greeks, right? So all of these who are somehow disconnected from the Vedic roots, they all will also get purified by remembering the Lord, and especially the devotees of the Lord, like that. So very beautiful prayers that that Sukdev Goswami offers. So you can read the rest of the prayers, and he concludes by saying that the specific question of creation that you have asked is something that Narada Muni asked Brahma, and now another nested conversation is going to start. Remember, Suta Goswami is addressing the sages of Naimisharanya, and he quotes Sukdev Goswami's conversation with Parikshit, and he quotes the conversation of Narada and Brahma, right? So, and then it's going to go further more nested conversations. So we will, in our next chapter, next discussion, we're going to see straight away the Vedic understanding of creation. We'll spend some time, maybe not in one class or multiple classes, to try to understand. Very, very beautiful, very deep understanding of the concept of creation. All right. So let's stop here. If there are any quick questions or comments anybody would like to ask, please unmute yourself, or I think you should be able to unmute yourself now. Please feel free to ask any questions or type it in the chat box.
Hare Krishna, am I audible?
Yes, Apurva, go on.
Yeah, you mentioned that the proof of authenticity is realization the person gets. But sometimes a person might not follow an authentic path, but still they feel something. They still feel, they feel that they are progressing. How do we understand that?
See, we have to learn to now therefore differentiate the difference between Sattva Guna and Shuddha Sattva, the spiritual energy and Sattva Guna. Most people mistake Sattva Guna to be spirituality. Because understand, Sattva Guna also pacifies the heart. Lot of the mental anxieties, they calm down when you experience Sattva Guna. Right? But what Sattva Guna does not give you is humility, gratitude, an acknowledgement that there's something bigger than me. In fact, sometimes people who are too absorbed in Sattva Guna can be so happy in their own little sattvic happiness, they may become apathetic to the world around them. Right? So that is why if you see Sukadeva Goswami, he was experiencing the higher transcendence, and yet he decided to come out of his meditation, come and save Parikshit in the last few moments of his life. So this is Shuka's compassion, which comes from the higher connection. So these are certain divine qualities that will manifest when compassion, humility, true, genuine non-violence. All these things they manifest in. So that's the difference between sattva guna and spiritual energy. All right. Okay, so let's end our discussion here. Thank you all so much once again for joining us. And next week, we're going to dive into some really technical aspects. So I request you all once again, the playlist is there in our YouTube page. Please try to hear first canto, chapter 3 again. The Science of Avatars is the title of this chapter, especially the concept of the Purusha Avatars, the Guna Avatars. Please hear that. It will be useful for our next week's discussion. All right. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.